This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. He speaks to the geeks and the musical freaks, but sometimes popular but mostly a freak because he's James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
So yeah, you're on a bit of a tight schedule because your album's out this week. Lots going on.
Yeah.
And you're going to my former homeland of Newcastle.
Yep. I love Newcastle. I was actually there for I'm staying with Catherine Williams because it's on the way to Glasgow and Edinburgh, where I'm doing my first in-store and doing BBC Scotland. But I was at Catherine Williams' 50th in February up there, and I really like Newcastle. It's quite sort of vibrant arts and culture scene there as well.
No. I mean, I was like, I went to university in Sunderland, and then I only moved to Newcastle because it had a cinema. Sunderland was very much my place, but I was, Newcastle had more to offer. Let's say,
Totally
beyond the people. Sunderland don't have a cinema now, so it got a cinema after I left. It sounds like I'm very hung up on the idea of living in a city with a cinema, but I like films,
Oh, me too, man. I'm a massive. Well, we'll get onto that in a bit, but I'm a even from an early age, I was sort of huge film aficionado, and I was always kind of making imaginary sort of soundtracks and things like that. And I actually made like a folk horror soundtrack on my cassette 4-track when I was about sort of 20. And I kind of, the sound of sort of made sounds like scratching in walls and doors creaking and things like that.
That's really interesting you say that, because I've always thought that your solo stuff is almost like, I mean, I know you've done some stuff with film, haven't you? You've done some stuff with.
I have, yeah. I'm just getting more into it, actually. I've done a couple of feature docs, and I had a crazy week last week because I got nominated for a BAFTA.
Blimey.
Yeah. I did the for original score factual. Sorry, I'm crowing and bragging, but
no, it's fine. Go for it.
Why not? But yeah, I got it's for Otto Baxter. It's called Otto Baxter, not a fucking. Is it all right to swear? Not a fucking horror story. So I did the music for the documentary, and also his short film. So he's got Down syndrome, and the whole film is about his life and it's kind of quite sort of groundbreaking film, breaking down the stigma. But he also made a short comedy horror set in Dickensian London called Puppet Asylum, based on his own life, with Paul Kay as the master and actors from The Witcher and things like that. And it's quite something. And I wrote a song for the credits called "Fuck You, I'm Evil."
Well, on these little segues that we're going from topic to topic, what I was going to say was that I've always felt like your solo stuff, it's almost like the songs. I've always thought they're songs that are looking for a soundtrack, if that makes sense.
Definitely, like I do sort of think quite cinematically when I'm writing, and and when I've finished a song, I always imagine it being somewhere in a film, like the end credits or something, or a scene where I don't know, like in Fight Club when the at the end they play "Where Is My Mind" and then and the buildings just sort of collapse. It's just such an iconic moment, and you can't imagine it without that song.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's I also think that doing, I know so many musicians that are around about our age that are either writing scores for movies or they're desperate to write scores for movies. And I do think it's a bit like, when journalists get to a certain age, they try to become like teachers or lecturers. And I feel like kind of indie rock guys, when they get to a certain point, they try to write soundtracks. So you're on the right career trajectory, I think.
100%. I mean, I've done it before. I've done a few sort of films and various bits and bobs, but it's what I've always wanted to do, and it just feels like after this record, I've got another Luke Guru record, my rock band, and then and I'm just kind of producing a few people, but after that, I really just want to focus on film. I love it. There's something really satisfying about when you're writing to visuals as well, and when you're working and collaborating with the director, and he's kind of like, it's not quite right, and you keep sort of chipping away at it, and then when you finally get it, when you finally like soundtrack that scene, particular scene, it's so rewarding. It's quite satisfying.
So is it a case of like composing to rushes of scenes?
Yeah, a lot of the time. Although, like with the Otto Baxter film, Rupert, the editor, he basically said he didn't give me any footage at all. I just started writing kind of songs from the perspective of Otto and of his mum and things like that, and just started kind of doing little instrumental pieces, and then they kind of worked for some reason. They kind of seemed to work, even though I hadn't seen the visuals. I actually heard that Jerskin Fendricks, the who was Oscar nominated for Poor Things score, apparently he just had like the art design and the costume design before he didn't have any visuals, and he kind of wrote this incredible score before he even had the visuals, you know. So that was pretty amazing, mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, that sounds to me a little bit like reading about David Bowie writing lyrics to put music to. It seems like something that would be very hard.
Yeah, but songwriting in general is it's quite a weird thing because you can't really control it, and it's a bit of it's sort of it kind of haunts you in a way, you know. It appears out of nowhere and goes, ooh, you know, and kind of, and then suddenly you're like, oh geez, you know, oh sorry, it's my email. I'll just turn my email off. Sorry.
That's fine. Was it a good one?
Uh, no, probably not. A lot of stuff's oh yeah. So what was I saying?
Well, I don't know. I want to know what the email was.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to get off it. Sorry, 1 second.
All right, do that. I mean,
It's hard.
You could have made
It's hard.
something up.
It's hard being so popular. You know, it's my burden. But
No, it's fine.
but yeah,
I did Dave McKay from the Zootons the other day, and his phone was going off all the way through the episode, and I was a bit like, you know, part of me was thinking,
come
maybe
on,
I should
dude.
say something, you know, but it was a nice conversation.
Was he answering? Was he answering the phone while he was on the?
No, he was just swearing every time it went off. He was just kind of like, for fuck's sake. And I was a little bit like, after the fifth or sixth time, I was a bit like, well, just maybe we could just go on airplane mode.
You know, but, I used to do things like when I was on tour in America, and I had to go and do like basically, sometimes you had to go into a radio station, and you wouldn't even be doing a session. You would actually have to prove yourself to all the people at the station. So you would go into a conference room with an acoustic guitar and sort of play one of the songs from your new album in front of them to kind of try to cajole them into actually playing your music on the radio station. And I just found it really disheartening. And I think I was in Seattle and I had to go and do it. And I don't even remember doing this because I was probably still drunk or hungover. But I sort of went into the conference thing and my phone rang halfway through a song called Born in the 70s. My phone rang. And instead of ignoring it, I stopped the song and answered the call in front of all these people and went, oh, all right. And I don't even remember doing it, but the woman from Astral Work, she was like, yeah, you got on the phone. You were like, oh, hey, man, how are you? How's it going? Yeah, I'm in Seattle. All right, yeah, I'll speak to you later. And then carried on the song.
You know, I sometimes wonder whether record company people might find that a bit cool and outlaw.
I don't think they did. I don't think I got played on the station.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, when we were just talking about film, was what film people like? You know, it's just a totally alien world to me, really. I've written about film a little bit, but do they get music? Do they get what they're
very much so, very much so? But it's interesting, like having meetings with directors, because some directors don't really know what they want, and they need you to just kind of, how about this? How about this? And it's almost like you have to throw things at the wall until it sticks sometimes. But it's really it's really great when you, because all I need as a composer is a bit of kind of a springboard really, or a spark or some guidance. So it's really nice to kind of be able to kind of bounce off each other with ideas. But sometimes I've noticed that like newer directors want a huge, massive, epic, Oscar-worthy soundtrack for like no money.
Oh right,
you know?
Okay.
So it's kind of so you have to kind of find a way around that and cheat a little bit. So luckily my wife is a violinist and her sister's a cellist who lives nearby. So sometimes I get them into the Wolf Cab in my studio and I record them and then I cheat with really amazing string samples. So
how do you budget for that? How do you I mean, my wife works in music management, so she's, we talk. I feel I'm a bit of an insider with these conversations. But how for a project like that do you go? Well, I'm going to need this much money.
Yeah, I think I haven't done anything yet that was like a huge budget, so I don't know. Everything's been pretty low budget, but I think it doesn't, like, doing a film score doesn't have to be like orchestral. It can be. I'm kind of like quite into a lot of sort of electronic music at the moment and doing kind of synth stuff. Like, I love all the John Carpenter
Yeah,
films, and
yeah,
he does his own soundtracks. And I think that's hugely influential, especially on people like Trent Reznor. It's like, or that sort of a more electronic side. So I think you can make something sound like the Dune soundtrack with with a MIDI keyboard. You
yeah,
can.
yeah,
You
yeah,
you literally can, and using samples. So you find a way around it if it's a low budget, to
yeah.
try and make something that's kind of bigger than it should be.
But for the benefit of any potential, any film directors that may potentially be wanting to commission you, we should reiterate that the more you pay, the more freedom that you will have.
The more you pay me, then the better it will sound, and it does mean that we can go to Abbey Road Studio One, and have
Exactly.
have a 60-piece orchestra, and and an orchestrator, and for me, like, yeah, I do need something that will satisfy my delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, yeah, no.
So
Well, I'm pleased that we cleared that up. With the new record, it's been a bit of been a little bit longer between records than you have had traditionally. Was
hmm,
that the world shutting down 4 years ago?
a little bit, yeah. I mean, most of this new record was written when we were. It's not a lockdown record, but it was written during that period. But I've actually been sitting on the record for like 2.5 years. Finished it 2.5 years ago. Um, but after, Furnaces was the last record that I did where I was singing of my own in 2016,
Okay.
and I just kind of like, after that we moved out here to Oxfordshire, and I built the studio, and I didn't really have any desire to make another record with words on it. I just wanted to, so I ended up doing 2 instrumental records,
Yeah.
um, and that was just, I really enjoyed doing it, and that was on Point of Departure recordings, Rich Machin from Soul Savers label.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just really, I just sort of didn't have any desire to, because Furnaces was such a kind of big, heavy uh, record, that I put 5 years of my life into that record, and then it just kind of like, didn't really do as well as I hoped. So kind of retreated to the country and licked my wounds and got on with it.
I mean, it's that thing, isn't it? I've had conversations with musicians on the podcast, and even just for magazines in the past. It's been going on for a time, where they almost kind of question the validity of releasing records because they just feel like it's such an investment of emotion and time, and so if it doesn't hit, and there's a lot of music out there, then
Yeah,
they almost kind of question the sort of the effort to the reward.
a
Was
100%, 100%. And you do feel like if you have a constant output, you don't get much back. It's kind of like, oh, what's the point? But if you have a drive, you have a drive, and you can't, like I said, you can't control it. You can't really tame it. It just keeps propelling you. It's a compulsion almost, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm obsessed with music. I always have been, and I've sort of, as soon as this record comes out, I'll start writing the next one, because I'm in this sort of weird creative purgatory. I can't write any songs until it's been released into the world, and I can be like, bye bye,
Yeah,
see you later. You're done. I mean, I'm kind of over it. I've been sitting on it for years. So I'm a
yeah.
bit like, oh, but everyone else, will hear it and it'll be new to them. But to me, I'm like, oh God. But it's
Well,
fine.
I have sometimes wondered, just because you have, I mean, it's quite clear. I mean, you've said a few times, it's like thou doth protest too much. It's very clear that you are a music man, and but you've got so many fingers in so many pies. Whether it's production or
Yeah.
songwriting, or like that. There has been part of me that's been interested in that you have continued to release music under your own name when you have been doing so much other stuff. Where do you think that comes from? Is that I don't
I
know. I
don't
mean,
know. I don't
yeah,
know. It just kind of like it just reveals itself and it just kind of appears from nowhere. And then suddenly I've got a collection of songs and I don't really know. I just kind of like it just happens. I can't control it. But I'll always make I think, one of the things is I feel so content and joyful when I'm just behind a piano. Like when I'm just sitting there and I'm playing and singing, just me and an old piano. That's kind of where I'm at, where I'm happiest at. And I think this new album is very sort of heavily piano strings. So it's quite sort of pop, lo-fi pop, I guess.
well,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I was gonna. I mean,
baroque and roll.
Baroque follows you round, I think, as a term. I mean, the fact you've been sitting on this record for some time, it means casting your mind back. But I felt like this record was quite angry in places. I don't want to kind of project that on you if that's not how you were feeling, but I felt like there was a certain kind of sort of frustration in your vocals I maybe haven't always heard before.
That's interesting.
Have I read too much into that, or
No, I don't know. It could just be age, you
right?
know, and
Okay.
the sort of jaded cynicism
Right.
of age. I don't feel like angry. I think it could have been very easy for me to become extremely bitter and jaded about my career and the industry and but everyone else that I talk to who's my age who's been in it for like 24 years feels the same way. Perhaps I'm just not very good at lying, so it might have kind of like it might have made its way in surreptitiously without me realizing. But it's very interesting to hear you say that because obviously it's your objective opinion. So I'm not able to kind of think outside that. I'm not even aware of it.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think sometimes we don't even know this stuff ourselves, perhaps, unless someone points it out. But I could just,
Totally.
like I say, it could just be. I also think this is one of the things I've realized about, cultural criticism is that a lot of it is like the projection of our own feelings of the writer or the critic's own feelings. It's like kind of
Yeah. No. You know
put it
what?
on
You
people.
may be onto something, but I think it might be more a case of the frustration may have been from it may have been from just being locked up because I recorded a lot of the vocals during the lockdown. There's quite an escapist element to it,
Right.
kind of wanting to escape.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of kind of us against the world aspect as well, which
Yeah. I
I've
can
always
hear
had a
that.
little. Yeah.
I mean, you can't. I mean, in terms of what you were just saying then, though, about sort of dissatisfaction or how you sort of maybe you've avoided having that bitterness. I mean, I do feel like you are a little bit older than me. I came to see you play. Or I say this to you every time we talk, but I came to see you play at the Doncaster Leopard when you were in Snug, right? So that's how far back I've been aware of you or watching you.
I remember that show very well.
I was talking to my wife about it the other day. I was saying because I think there was probably about 7 people there. I
There
mean,
was
it was
about 7 people, but there was about four really scary guys. And we went off stage and they were like, get back on stage. We were like, okay. We were like 18 years old. And then I remember the guy who owns the Leopard gave us like a half-baked potato, and that was it for like dinner. It was like a potato, but it hadn't even been cooked, and it had nothing with it. It was just not even any like. There's nothing. It was
that's.
just a potato.
I mean, that sounds like Doncaster to me.
Yeah, and then we went outside after the gig, and our van had been completely covered in paint.
Yeah,
It was a good night.
yeah. I'm sorry about my dad. There is. I went to the Leopard actually not that long ago, and it's all been done up, and I was actually quite disappointed. It looks like quite a nice sort of toilet venue now, as opposed to the sort of apocalyptic end of days structure that it once was. But
Yeah.
the reason I say all this is that look, we're gallivanting towards 50, right? And like we've been obsessed with music all our lives. And I definitely feel, despite doing a podcast about music and churning out episodes at a rate and knots, I definitely feel I love music, but I'm more frustrated with the mechanics around music than at any point in my life. The sort of lack of meaning or respect that it's shown within culture, or how difficult it is for musicians or people on my side of the fence to make a living, and the knock-on
Mm.
effects that has. I just think the whole thing's in disarray. Music's
It
still
is.
brilliant, but the whole thing's in disarray. Is it more that you're talking about that you've seen over the course of your time in music? Because I don't really see how you could be dissatisfied with your career because I
Oh
did.
no, I'm not at
Yeah,
all. Like I feel like, but it's very easy to kind of like take stock and ruminate and kind of be like, have I actually succeeded? I don't even know. But other people would tell me, shut up, shut the fuck up, Ed. You know, you've
yeah,
done well. You're doing well. You know, and but that's just normal. I think that's just you kind of feeling like I also get like imposter syndrome like everyone else. You know, especially like when I got nominated last week for a BAFTA. I was a bit like, what, really? I just didn't feel like worthy. I think it's just a lack of feeling worthy sometimes.
I think there's something as well where it's. I speak to a lot of musicians where they talk an awful lot about how they constantly have to motivate themselves. So the longer you do it, it's like I think despite the fact that you go out and you play to people and there's that connection, like it can be quite a lonely experience in a way, and a lot of time in your own head, and a lot of time to compare yourself to what
It's
other people.
lonely, but it's actually kind of I've actually really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm driving myself around all these in-stores and I'm quite excited. I'm got all the different other podcasts I'm going to be putting on and listening and new albums and just going to have a bit of me time.
Are you okay with your own company?
Yeah, totally. I'm
Is that
sort of
because you are? Is
good,
that because
good
you have two children?
I've got two children, but also I'm quite gregarious. I once got called by a teacher. I got called the oil in the social machine, but because at school, I kind of flitted in between all the different groups. I was friends with everyone, but I'm also kind of very, very happy being solitary. So, because my dad was in the army, we moved around every sort of 2 years. So I'd go to a different school and I'd learn how to make friends quite quickly. So I had to adapt, which I think is that's kind of done quite well for me later in life. I mean, I made most of my best friends in London, in the 20s, sort of going out and going to gigs and bars and partying. I didn't really kind of retain any school friends, not really.
Yeah,
So
neither did. Well, I mean, sort of. They look at my Instagram stories and they occasionally comment on Facebook, but I don't really I don't drink with them like I did do in my teens. But I sometimes feel like I failed a little bit with that. Like my wife, she's still friends with the people that she was. They go on holiday, the girls that she was
yeah,
at school with, like every year. Like,
really.
yeah, maybe there's something wrong with us.
I mean, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I sort of. What I love is like the friends that I have who are my best friends who are also my collaborators as well, or I like to call them co-conspirators. And Steve Gullick, the photographer, he's someone that I've worked with for ever since the beginning, like 24 years, and we are totally like the sort of odd couple. We're sort of Mathau and Lemon,
Yeah, yeah.
and and
I've only met Steve twice, but I'm trying to imagine the two of you.
oh my God, it's just hilarious. We've had so many mad escapades. And what happens is we sort of almost egg each other on, and he'll be like, "I think we should shoot the artwork and the video in Iceland, and you should dress up as a bear." And I'll be like, "All right." And then a week later, I'll call him up and be like, I've booked the tickets and I've bought a bear suit." And he's like, well, "I was only joking."
Oh,
And
right.
and then it happens. So we kind of like. I don't know. We sort of totally egg each other on, and I love that. That's what, I love having that. It's kind of like everyone else has sort of fallen by the wayside, collaboratively, and in work, and we're still best friends. And
No, well, I love Steve. I mean, I keep
he's the
thinking about,
best.
I keep thinking about getting him on the podcast at some point.
You
So,
should definitely get him on the podcast. Is he'd be fantastic.
yeah, funny guy, taking loads of photos that I love. How do you? I suppose the other thing as well is that obviously your name carries weight because you've made a lot of good music, but like, how do you? You've crossed paths with so many people in your career that you've collaborated or worked with. Like, how do they? Do you hand out little Ed Harcourt business cards to people, or how do people get to you?
Yeah. I just sort of get hunted down, I guess. I'm not very, even though I am a social animal, I'm not very good at networking. Um, so I kind of need other people to do that for me. But
I think the people who are good at networking, they do it without knowing they're good at networking, though.
Very true.
They're just gregarious.
Yeah, it becomes like second nature. But that's the thing. I am social, but I'm just not. I think I'd rather just like hang out with the villagers here and go for a pint. But
yeah. So you think it's more a case of people talk about you to people?
maybe, yeah. I think I kind of get approached, and someone will be like, "I got your email from so and so, and would you be interested in this?" Um, and I mean, as far as kind of like production, what I've done of late, actually, I've sort of put up little Instagram, social media videos of me in the Wolf Cabin, and I've just kind of said, "Hey, the Wolf Cabin's open for business.
Yeah.
If you want to come and make a record, get in touch. It's this amount per day, and but it's a very good deal. You get me as producer if you want, engineer, mixing for a little extra if you want, and then I'm also the band. So I kind of like, if it's a solo artist, I end up playing drums and bass and guitar or whatever they don't play. So.
That is really interesting, because the reason why I remembered that I'd been meaning to ask if you'd come on the podcast is because I did an episode which hasn't aired yet, because we went for an hour and a half and I don't quite have the courage to edit it yet. But I did an episode with Billy Reeves, and he name dropped you, and I was like, oh, I must speak to Ed, So maybe it is that thing of people talking about
what
you.
What was the context, I wonder?
Well, it was very complimentary. I don't want to.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't want to set off any twitch.
Just checking
in anyone's brain. I don't think he was. Actually, tell you what. Very early. I'm spoilers for this episode, but very early in the episode, he did kind of start playfully jabbing at Damon Albarn, which I was a bit like, oh, okay. Well, I don't really know where to go with that.
Yeah. Well, I don't. No comment.
Yeah. Don't. Yeah. Just let's not get ourselves in trouble. Did you wrote for Lisa Marie Presley, didn't you?
I worked with Lisa Marie a long time ago, about 10 years ago. We wrote 3 songs on her record that T-Bone Burnett produced. So she came to London, and we kind of hung out, and then we ended up doing a little show in Soho together. And then I also sang with her at the Bush Hall. And then, yeah, she was kind of, we would email, but it all kind of went a bit awry with her ex, Michael. Right. It all went a bit odd. But so I lost touch with her in the last sort of 5-6 years. So it was, it was very sad, but it was so weird because when she died, I was kind of like, oh, I found this song. I found this song that we'd written called Light of Day, and it was really beautiful. It's like a sort of hymn, and I listened to it, and I was kind of like, her voice actually sounded amazing, and you could even hear her father a little bit in it, in the inflections and the tone. But it's a really beautiful song. And this is the weirdest thing. My son, I'd given him a copy of Hellboy, the comic, and he was like, "Dad, there's some like lyrics in here," and I must have stuck her lyrics that she'd written for some reason absentmindedly in a Hellboy comic when I was moving studios. And
That's wild.
Yeah, and then he brought it down. I opened up, and this is literally the day after she passed, and the lyrics were there, and I was like, "Whoa, like this is spooky."
By the way, top parenting, giving your son Hellboy comics. I'm all for that.
He's well into his comics, and he's really into, like, he wants to do coding now, I think. But he's just his favorite bands are like Nirvana and Foo Fighters and Beastie Boys, and so he's on a good trajectory himself. But he's just got a merit in his grade 5 drums. So I'm very proud of him. He's only 12, and he's done his grade 5 drums. So.
I love it. You were being a bit apologetic when you were sort of showboating about your recent award nomination, but your son, just go for it.
Yeah, man. Totally. Well, he'll be playing in my band in no time on half pay. So
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah. So then Lisa, invited me. This is a really weird. I should probably put this in a memoir in 25 years' time. But she invited myself and my wife Geeta and our kids when they were really young down to this estate that she had down in West Sussex for New Year's Eve. And we went down there, and we went to this pub, and I kid you not, the pub was called the King's Arms. And Priscilla arrived around sort of 11 p.m. because she'd been doing panto in London, and she arrived, and then we were all kind of dancing and doing shots. And I think at about 1 a.m. I was slow dancing with Priscilla,
Oh my God.
on New Year's Day, and I'm slow dancing with Priscilla in the King's Arms. This is so random. And then the next day we went back to the house, and I woke up and I walked around the house. I was quite hungover, and found this piano, and I sat down and started playing it. And Lisa sort of arrived, and she was like, "Oh, that was my dad's," and I was like, "Okay." And then she was like, "Should we watch a film?" And I was like, "Okay." So we went to watch Rock of Ages. They had it in a cinema room, and I kid you not, I sat down and I had Lisa Marie and Priscilla on either side, and I had the popcorn, and we watched Rock of Ages.
Oh my God. That is,
It's quite a surreal moment.
I can't believe you've given me that. I feel like you should have saved that, if I'm being honest.
It doesn't matter. You know what? I don't think I'll write it. I don't think I'll write a memoir. I mean, I had an idea in my head of doing sort of David Niven, Moon's a Balloon style, kind of like the Zelig who's kind of just floated around, through the decades and met all these weird and wonderful people. But
yeah, all that episode of Quantum Leap where he's sort of in the background of all these men.
Love Quantum Leap.
I know. I've been thinking recently. I need a Quantum Leap binge. The reason I was asking about Lisa Marie is I recently got obsessed with her music.
Really?
Oh yeah. There's sometimes that thing where like someone passes away. This is quite a ghoulish thing to admit.
Wow.
Sometimes I find that when people pass away, it's almost like, their art almost takes on a sort of a different. I've just always been quite fascinated by her. I've always thought she was quite. The fact that before you referred to her ex or her husband, I can't remember how you said it, but you were referring to Michael Jackson, right?
No, I was Michael. I don't really want to talk about that because it's a bit like
that's absolutely
no. The whole thing. It was Michael Lockwood, he's a good friend, and just the whole thing was very ugly. It was an ugly experience, I think, for him,
right?
For both of them. But
yeah, when you said Michael, I was like,
yeah, Michael MJ, my good pal.
Yeah, Shamon and all that.
Yeah, Shamon.
Yeah.
That's whole because I was working with her when he died as well, so that was quite weird.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was, and she was kind of like, "Yeah, I've got to go to MJ's funeral." I was like, "Wow."
Is that what she called him, MJ?
Yeah. I was kind of like, "This is really." I never thought I'd sort of be, be with you and hear you say that. It's quite a weird.
Yeah, you're not the Doncaster Leopard anymore, Ed.
But it does haunt my soul. That fateful night in 1996, I think it was.
Yeah. Was it? Oh God, crikey!
96 or 97, definitely. Yeah,
I would have been 16. Listen, I'm at the moment. This is an insight into the life of a freelance music journalist in 2024. I'm currently working on a free Zoom account where previously I had a pro Zoom account. So we are approaching the end of the free, my free status.
No problem.
At this point, I would like to remind listeners that I have a Patreon. If you'd like to subscribe, then maybe I can get my pro account turned back on. But it probably seems a good time to wrap up before that decision is made for us. So the record's out Friday.
Yes.
And I think it's really good. I think
thank you.
People should. Do people buy records? They should buy it.
They should buy it, but one of the things that's great is that the vinyl is already sold out. So,
well, this is it.
Yeah, man. The Dinked edition, the limited edition, which is gold vinyl, comes with a signed poster, and it also comes with a 7-inch. I've done a cover of "Song to the Siren," the Tim Buckley, Liz Fraser. I've done a version of that.
I love that.
And it's got a B-side called "Let's Run Away from It All." It's kind of another escapism, a lockdown. It kind of talks about Soho and Hollywood being deserted and having the best suite in the hotel in Hollywood, and because there's no one there and stuff like that.
Well, listen, when I've got at some point down the line, when I've got my Zoom Pros sorted out, and when you're not racing to get to Newcastle, I think we should do a part 2 if you'd be up for that.
I'd love that. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, James, and thanks for having me.
Amazing. All right, Ed, I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers. Take care.
Take care, man. Bye.